I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Today's guest I actually met in Marshall, Texas, of all places, which is kind of weird considering I live in California and she lives in Canada. But hey, that's what happens when you get to go to wonderful conferences. Her name is Shoshana Chaim. She is half of a duo that does a wonderful podcast called the Plant Trainers Podcast. And she's an author. We're going to have her back and when her book comes out, actually. But today she's going to be making a recipe that sounds delicious. It's sweet potato and peas, mac and cheese. Please welcome Shoshana.
Hi, thank you, AJ. Thank you. Or I should call you Chef AJ. It's like you're a doctor where you can't say AJ, you need to say Chef AJ.
No, AJ's fine, really, honestly. It's short, sweet, and to the point. We were talking before the show how my real name legally is Abby, but when I was working at a retirement home, that was my career before I went to culinary school. I don't know why the residents it was too hard for them to remember, but they could remember like the two letters. So that's not kind of how I became AJ. So yeah, this is so great. So what have you guys been doing? How's Canada?
Canada is great. It's cold. It's cold and snowy right now. It'd be nice to be down in the States. We didn't get our regular getaway at the Christmas vacation, but that's all right. It's a beautiful sunny day. And, Canada, we're playing it safe. We're conservative like we normally are and, staying at home as much as possible and trying to spread the love through social media and keep everybody entertained and keep everybody eating well inside their homes.
Nice. Well, I can't wait. I don't know if we'll have time for Adam's story today, but he can come on because I love just the reason that you guys became plant-based. I was listening to podcasts again just because I forgot exactly why it started, but I love that it started for one reason and continued for many reasons.
Yeah, it definitely did continue for many reasons, but I think at the heart of it, it's that we want to get the message out to as many people as possible that there's more about nutrition, there's more science, there's more about fitness, there's more about lifestyle that we know about. And the more we know, the more we can make informed decisions. And as many families as possible can be either saved from ever having to go through what we went through, or if they're already in that situation, they have other tools to get them out and to increase or lower their chances of it ever coming back.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, everybody loves mac and cheese. I mean, whether they're vegan or not, who doesn't, right? And you're doing a healthy version.
We're doing a healthy version. People are cutting back on the carbohydrates, especially the processed ones more. So, noodles is not something that every adult likes to be eating these days. And, when you're on your weight loss journey, it's not necessarily what you should be eating. But we love sweet potato in this house. We love every color sweet potato. We try to get as many different varieties when we're able to go to the market and the stores. So we're going to be making a mac and cheese dish, but instead of using the noodle, we're going to use the sweet potatoes instead. And I mean, the truth is, check this out. The truth is just the sweet potatoes alone, I could just eat that all day, right? These are air fried with no oil whatsoever. I cut them up. It's probably about 4 or 5 potatoes, and I just air fried them for about 15 minutes, shook it every now and then, and they're beautiful, ready to go. And this is part of the batch cooking too, because you can just keep them in the fridge and use them for whatever dishes you want. But this way, the kids are happy with their noodles and we're happy with our sweet potatoes.
That's great. So sometimes do you ever spiralize them to get the noodly shape?
I don't, but maybe I should. I kind of like it simple. I cut them up like this and then I could use it in variety of dishes throughout the day. I'm kind of like simple and saving time, but now you're getting me thinking.
Yeah. Oh, I actually in the stores eat like Whole Foods and Sprouts. And actually, I think even in Trader Joe's, they actually sell them already spiralized. Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely. When I go to the health food store, I can get that. You're right.
Actually, even in the regular store, like ours is called Winco, they have them in the freezer section, Green Giant, already spiralized zucchini and butternut squash.
More reasons to go down to the States.
Do you have a variety of sweet potatoes in Canada, or do you have trouble getting like the Hana and the Japanese and the Hawaiian?
We've got to dig. I mean, things have definitely been slimmer picking in the last 11 months, but generally speaking, we know that we can only get the purple ones if we go to Whole Foods. So our regular health food store that's around the corner, they'll have Jamaican ones, they'll have sometimes the Japanese. So it kind of depends where we go and what time of year and if they get them in. So nothing's ever really a guarantee other than your plain old beautiful orange sweet potatoes.
Right. Well, I'm learning to like those more because they're so, when I write recipes for Hannah, people are like, I can't get them, but yeah, the orange ones are still good.
Good. Awesome. Yeah. So should we get going with the recipe? You want to know what to do?
Absolutely.
Good. Okay. So I'm super excited. What we're going to do is we're going to use our high-speed blender today. If somebody doesn't have them, then what I'm going to recommend that they do in the future is when they bring their cashews up or their seeds up, that they actually just let it soak for an hour or so first. So it makes it a little bit softer, but the high-speed blenders really blend them up really well. So that's not an issue. So we're going to make the sauce first. This is something, like I said, the sweet potatoes, you can do them right before, you can do them while you're making the sauce. You can have them in the fridge for days. It doesn't matter because it's all going to be heated up again later. So the sauce is really what's going to make it today. So we're going to use half a cup of cashews. And if you want it really, really saucy, I definitely recommend going for a full cup. And then you can decide later on if you want to use it all. And it freezes really well. I'll stick it in a little Ziploc bag or I'll stick it in a container and I'll let it freeze in the freezer, and it's good for about a month or two. So you can batch this too and only use what you need. And a lot of people might say, cashews, I don't like to do a lot of it. It's, you know, it's very high fat, or it's just not what they want to be having a lot of. And what I've played with before is using some hemp hearts instead, and kind of using a quarter of hemp hearts and the rest of the cashews. It does change the flavor to be a little bit more bitter, but for people who can't do the cashews, it is an option. And I'm going to put in a quarter cup of water into there. And then I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of, we're going to do 3 tablespoons of lemon juice as well, but I only took out 1 tablespoon. So always do your dry ingredients first. So Nooch, or nutritional yeast, is a really great addition to this for color and also for the flavor and to kind of get the right texture. So we're going to do 2 tablespoons of Nooch.
Yeah, some people don't know that the nickname for nutritional yeast is Nooch.
It's Nooch, yeah. And please, please do not, because we've made that mistake once, don't use brewer's yeast. It's not the yeast that you use to make your bread or anything like that. It needs to say nutritional yeast in the store. And if you go to the store and ask for Nooch or look for Nooch in the aisles, you probably won't find the word Nooch there. That's just a nickname term that we like to use. So now I'm going to do the 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. And lemon juice, I always say, when you can, use the real thing. So what I do is every few days, I take 2 or 3 lemons and I juice them and I keep them in a little container. So I have fresh lemon juice ready. It doesn't sit for too long, but it makes a huge difference. All right, so we have the half a cup of cashews. We have the quarter cup of water, the 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, and the 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And then there's salt. So some people might use salt substitute. Some people might not use any salt at all. You can play around with it with your own taste buds. We don't use a ton of salt in this house, so when I do make this recipe, I like it to taste right. So I do use the salt in there. And we're gonna go with half a teaspoon of turmeric. And that also, it brings out the color, but it also bumps up the nutrition in there and the antioxidants and all of those great things. And if you're a pepper lover, you can put some hearts there in the video, and you can add your pepper too. And that's whatever you like, however much pepper you like over there. And really the truth is that that is everything. And then we're just going to blend it together here. So it's going to get loud. It's going to get loud. You might want to turn down your volume, but if you're here with us watching, I suggest you stand up out of your seat and do a little dance and get your body moving while it's blending. Let's go. There there you go. So that's about all you need when you are using the high-speed blender. If you're using a blender that's not high speed, I would say you might need to do it a little bit longer. And if you've soaked the cashews in water, don't forget to drain them first so it doesn't end up too liquidy. Now, if you want it a little bit more liquidy, you could always add more lemon juice. You could always add more water, a little bit at a time. But here we go. Can you see that? It's got a beautiful color. Have you made this before, Chef AJ?
I have, yes, not your recipe because I just got it, but absolutely. And people always want to know, do you ever freeze it and does it freeze well?
Yes, so this definitely freezes well. So I will double or triple it, and then I'll use one batch for like a third of it for sweet potatoes, a third of it if the kids choose to have noodles that day, and then I'll put a third of it in the fridge or even 2/3 of it in the fridge so that the freezer. And then I just defrost it the day of, and it's a really fast meal and it's delicious. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it right on top of all of these beautiful sweet potatoes. Can you see that? Should I move it back a little?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to use it instead of just over plain old pasta.
Exactly. And I mean, pasta is getting really creative these days. You have all of those lentil-based pastas and stuff like that. So the fibers there, but it's still, it's still made into a flour where you're not getting as much whole food. You're not taking up as much room in your tum-tum. So you end up a little bit extra hungry, right?
Yeah, I love anything with sweet potato is got to be good. And, you could probably put it over regular potatoes too. Like they call it potachos, where they take potato, they call it potato nachos.
Yes, you most probably can. I'm just going for the peas over here. You most probably, you can. We do a lot of our white potatoes, like when we have more of like a burger night or something like that. So we like to go back and forth. Now the frozen peas, we're going to do about a cup of frozen peas. Depends how much you like. And I put them back in the freezer when I prepared them because when they defrost and you try to mix it all up, they kind of get a little bit mushy. But if they're still frozen while you mix it up, then they are keeping their integrity of the shape over there. So here we go. Can you see that? Oh. So, runaway pea. So delicious. And you can stop here if you want to and just put a little cover on it, put it in the fridge until you're ready for dinner later, or even, for the next day for lunch, and just pop it into the oven at about 350 degrees for 5 or 10 minutes. If you want to keep some additional sauce and make a little bit more so that you can put it back on, because it can get dried out in the oven, but I kind of like it that way, or you can top it off. So for people who like topping things off, what I did is I took some you could keep this gluten-free, right? And that's the other good thing, right? This is already gluten-free. So those people who are not eating gluten, I took some Ezekiel bread. So I took some bread that's very high quality and I made my own breadcrumbs. I always prefer doing that other than buying the store ones because there's so many ingredients in there and sugars and all kinds of things and food coloring that we don't really need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that. I mixed it up with a little bit of salt and some onion powder and garlic powder. But if you're a green onion lover, like I am, you can definitely add some green onions in here too. You can use chives. You can use any kind of bake-un kind of products, like whether it's made from eggplant or coconut or anything like that. But I like that little bit of extra crisp. So I'm going to put some green onion on top, and then I'm going to put the breadcrumbs. And they're going to crisp up in the oven. And then I'm going to put some more of the green side of the onion on top so it adds a little nice contrast color on top. And there we go. Woo.
Man, that's like a casserole at its finest.
It is a casserole at its finest, at its healthiest. And I mean, the great thing is that you can make 2 of them and have it again for dinner tomorrow night, right? I wouldn't freeze that per se, but definitely freezing the sauce to make it easier for next time. And it's really great for families that need things done and warmed up fast when life gets back to normal and all the activities are happening, or just anybody who wants to make sure that your meals are thought out, your meals are prepared, because that keeps you from digging down into the panic foods, the foods where, oh my God, I'm hungry, what can I eat just now? And if this is already made, there's no excuse not to go healthy.
Nice. And your kids love it too, right?
They love the cheese sauce. And what we actually do sometimes too is they'll dip the French fries into it, or we might use it for a nacho night as well. So that's awesome. They prefer chives more than green onion too. It's a little milder in taste as well.
Nice. So how hard was it to transition your kids to plant-based?
So that's a really good question. I think it was harder to transition myself than it was to transition my kids. Adam was snap. Adam went fast overnight. It took me about 7 months to catch up with him. So at that time, I had kind of learned over time. And as I was learning over time, I was slowly removing foods from my kids' diet and slowly putting other things in too. So we weren't making red meat in the house. We weren't making chicken in the house. We weren't making fish in the house anymore. So they slowly started to eat what we were eating. And then the last thing that I really felt like I transitioned them on was they were still eating eggs and cheese. It was just really easy to make an omelet. I was getting them to eat everything else by sprinkling a little bit of cheese on top. And then one day I realized, if we're not eating it, why aren't they? And that because I had gotten my nutrition background, I was comfortable and knew that they can thrive on it and that I wasn't kind of, ruining their development or anything. And then we kind of just switched. So it happened so slowly that it was okay. But there were certain foods that I wanted them to eat that took a long time. For example, tofu. Not every family eats tofu. Not everybody has to eat tofu, but it's something that Adam and I enjoy and we wanted the kids to enjoy. So I must have made it about 17 different times, 17 different ways until I was able to get them to eat it. So I marinated it and I steamed it and I fried it and I baked it and different sauces. And then one day I cut them into little French fries and they're like, what's this? And I'm like, it's a different kind of French fry. And they're like, okay. And they dipped it in the ketchup and boom, we were done. Now, it's not to say that if I would have done that the first time that they would have gone ahead and eaten it because it looked like a French fry, but they had all of those different exposures. So you really need to keep offering these foods to your children over and over again in many different ways, because that's when they eventually get to the, okay, I'm ready to do it now.
Yeah, they say, it takes like 15 times of a new food for it to become a preferred food, and you can't give up just because somebody doesn't like the taste of something once. If that was true, I'd never eat vegetables.
Right, and I never would have eaten cilantro. We hated cilantro. We didn't like cilantro. We didn't like any of the curry flavors either, but we just kept trying. And we actually went to India hating curry. But by the time we left 3 weeks later, we were sold. We loved it.
Yeah. That's really great. A lot of people watching from Canada want to know what part of Canada you're from.
I'm in the Toronto area. So I'm just outside of Toronto, a stone throw.
Nice. And Linda wants to know if you peeled the sweet potatoes when you cubed them.
So I don't peel them personally. I scrub them down. And as I'm cutting them, I check for any parts that I wouldn't want to eat, right? Any of those like really rough parts. But generally, we're buying organic sweet potatoes and we've got lots of nutrients there in the skin.
Yeah. People came in late and didn't know that the sweet potatoes weren't raw. You cubed them and you air fried them, right?
I did. And I used to put them in the oven before too. So if you don't have an air fryer, don't worry about it. Cube them up, put them in the oven. You can cover them for the first little while because it keeps the heat in more. But then I like to expose them so that that moisture dries up so that they're not too moist and slimy when I go to cover it with the sauce as well.
Linda wants to know how old your kids are.
Our son is 12 and our daughter's 10.
So did they like being plant-based now? Like they understand why they're doing it?
They understand why they're doing it. I mean, for us, it really started from a health point of view, right? Adam had a tumor, he had heart disease, and he wanted to know that he was going to be around to raise the kids and around as long as possible. And that's how he found a plant-based lifestyle. So for us, it's always about our own health first. But the kids, because they're kids and they kind of paid closer attention to it a little bit later into our journey when we were more aware of the environment, we were more aware of the animals, we started volunteering and doing tours at animal sanctuaries, I think our kids would call themselves a little bit more vegan, while we have vegan parts to us, but we really say we're plant-based. For us, it's about our health first, and we're so happy that all the ripple effects help the rest of the world and other people and animals in so many ways. But they love it, and they stand by it, and they defend themselves at school. And I have parents calling me saying, my daughter won't eat dairy anymore. What can I give her? Because she had this and that at your house, or when your daughter comes over, she won't eat it. So now all the other kids don't want to eat it too. So it's quite interesting how they can influence their friends.
That's great. It's reminded of a story. Dr. Goldhammer, he raised his son not only plant-based, but the same way he eats, without sugar, oil, salt, very, very, health promoting. Some people might say too extreme. But one day he was having lunch, and the kid was eating a bologna sandwich. And Gar actually said to him, God, your parents must not love you. Look what they gave you for lunch.
Well, you know what? It's funny that he said that out loud, because Russell has come home and said, I'm sad. I don't understand why my friends are eating. I mean, he didn't say their parents don't love them, but he's like, I don't understand why they're eating foods that can eventually make them sick, or that are making them sick right now. I don't know why they're doing it. And the kids were a little rude at the beginning for him at, like grade 4, grade 5 boys picking up their meat from their sandwiches and, like kind of flinging it around. But that stopped pretty quickly. Boys are boys, and girls, she's making more of an impact in the other way. But yeah, so Russell has expressed that to us at home, but not publicly in front of his friends.
That's funny. Yeah, I always worry about kids, because I don't want it hard for them. And I know that for some, I think it depends on the personality on the kid, but sometimes kids can be really mean.
They can be mean, and food is such a sensitive thing, and you want to get your kids to eat as well as possible and still be kids at the same time, and make sure that you're not accidentally creating any kind of, mental health issues down the road around food too. So what I teach about is that kids don't have a lot of control in their life, right? Get in the car, don't get in the car, wear your boots, wear your shoes, we need to leave now, go to bed, wake up. What assignment to do. They don't have any flexibility at school. So one of the only things that they can control is the food that they're eating. And that's why I do give my kids choices. Do you want noodles? Do you want to try the sweet potatoes? Can I just put everything on the table and they can build it themselves? And maybe they want green onions, or maybe they don't. Maybe they want breadcrumbs, maybe they don't. We don't all have to eat the same thing on our plate, as long as it's coming from the same sources and I'm not turning into a short order chef.
Right. I'm hosting the Truth About Weight Loss Summit that's starting on February 12th or 13th, I think it is. And I finally got a pediatrician, a plant-based pediatrician. And, so many parents don't know better. It just, that's true. But so many of them that do, they still don't do it because they're so addicted to the bad foods themselves. You know what I mean?
And kids kind of see through that. So if you've got your Oreo cookies tucked away in your night table drawer or on a shelf up above, they know it's there, and it's almost better to just have it out there if it's going to be in the house, have it out there for everybody, but encourage the healthy snacks. The kids will come home from school, and I know that they'll want, they'll want their pretzels or whatever it is, but I already have apple cut up, or I'm cutting up an apple as they walk in so they can have it together. And just give them as many chances and exposures to eat those healthy foods too. And there's so much that you can do with bananas and apples to make it fun and interesting, and little chocolate chips on top so that they're not missing out. But if you don't do it yourself, if you don't walk your talk, your kids they're going to see through it, and they're not going to go along with it either.
Right. What you said about cutting up the apple, that's brilliant, because I've heard the psychologist, Dr. Doug Lisle, talk about the conservation of energy principle. And you could have this beautiful fruit bowl on your counter with apples and bananas and oranges, and they might not eat it. But if you go to the trouble to cut it and then give it to them, they'll eat it. That's how people are.
That's how they are. And sometimes at night, we're not big eaters at night, but the kids might go, I'm still hungry, or I'm hungry, or I want a snack. And we'll kind of say, okay, let's cut an apple. And if they go, nah, then I know they're not really hungry. That's something, maybe we're watching TV, or maybe something triggered them to want some kind of junk food, or maybe they're thirsty. But if they're like, can I have an apple with something else? then I know that they are actually hungry too. So, you know, we've got to watch for that. But yeah, the conservation of energy. When I cut it, Adam could cut 2 apples, go sit down, and before you know it, he's only got 2 slices left because everybody's hands go into it. It's just there.
It just makes a difference. In the same thing, a kid may not eat a carrot, but you cut it into carrot sticks and you have a delicious hummus or guacamole, and then all of a sudden they eat a carrot.
It's true. It's true. And sometimes, you know, and if they're not eating that carrot or they're not eating the cucumber, the celery, go back to the story about the tofu, cut it into circles or cut it into longer ones. I remember they weren't so keen on carrots for a while, but instead of cutting them into long sticks, I was cutting them into the little circles. And they like this show. Is it called like Jake? Some kind of pirate show with a kid named Jake. It was a cartoon. And he called the gold gabloons or gold kaploons. So I would call them eat your carrot kaploons, and they associated it with the show and they enjoyed that too. So, you know, if anybody's watching and saying, oh, but my kids won't eat it, just keep trying it in different ways and associating it with things that they like. Eventually they'll take to it.
Yeah, it's weird because I didn't really eat vegetables till I was 43, except for one, and it was broccoli, and that's because my mom made it fun. And she said, "Oh, look, these are little trees, and this is the only vegetable you can eat: the leaf, the stalk, and the stem." And I just remember her making broccoli fun, and I grew up eating broccoli, nothing else, unfortunately. And you know, there's so many cookie cutter shapes that I have one from a Pampered Chef kit, and you can make things in such cool shapes: hearts and stars and flowers, and you can make it, you know, kind of like that idea of the edible arrangement, you know. It makes fruit eating so much easier because they made it into flowers and hearts and all that thing.
Yeah, that's fine. We were actually we recorded an episode this morning for the Plant Tuners podcast, and we were talking about using those cookie cutters, the heart ones. So for everybody watching for Valentine's Day, as it comes up, cut your food into use those little hearts and cut your food. And it makes it a lot of fun. And it's not that you need to make anything special or elevated. It's just kind of put the theme to it. But broccoli is not a problem in this house. It's our son's favorite food. He started to grow his hair to look more like a broccoli. And that's how he started with the long hair. Now it's so long, it's in a ponytail. But at the beginning, he loved broccoli so much. So for every dress up holiday, we buy green hair spray and spray his hair. So you never know when a kid's going to really take to a vegetable.
That's great. So a couple more questions on the dish. Alex says, do you cook it in the oven? So I guess after you've assembled it, do you then reheat it or cook it in the oven?
Yeah, so this can go about 10 minutes in the oven at about 350 or until the breadcrumbs start to get brown. And like I said, if you do find that it dries out a little bit, have some extra sauce on the side, have some of that extra mac and cheese sauce on the side to pour back on. But yeah, so this is not, I mean, you could eat it cold, but you're going to want to warm it up, crisp up those onions, crisp up the breadcrumbs, and get that warmth going through all the potatoes, which are, if anybody's just joining us, pre-cooked and great for your batch cooking ideas.
Great. And there's a question from Mandy. If you want to eat it the next day, how do you heat it up? Because I'm assuming you refrigerate it afterwards.
Yeah, so if you're a microwave person, you could toss it in the microwave. If you're an oven person, toss it back in the oven. And if you're I don't have a lot of time person, you could try it cold and see if you like it.
Great. Actually, that question was from Michelle. I apologize, Mandy. Mandy made the comment, your kids sound great. And Mary says, from which age on the kids are wholly plant-based? So what age did you transition your kids?
So I think it was about 5 and 7 that they actually were 100% plant-based. And it must have been then 5 and 3 that we kind of started. No, it had to be longer than that. So all of this started, Adam's whole health issue started while I was pregnant with the little one. So she's 10 now. So Adam's been 100% plant-based for about almost 9 years. So it must have been, she must have been 3. Yeah, she was 2 or 2.5. And then he was about 4.5, 5 about 4 when all this started. And it went, like I said, it went slowly. Once I stopped eating chicken, I stopped making it in the house. Once I stopped eating fish, I stopped making it in the house. But if we were to go to restaurants and we were with our parents or something like that, and they wanted to eat off my parents' plate, I didn't say anything about it. So it was really probably about a 2-year transition. But keep in mind, 9, 10 years ago, we didn't have all the resources that we have today. We didn't have amazing shows like yours to help us along the way. There were books, but not as many books. There were not many, if any, plant-based pediatricians even talking about this. So for me, I was already going through my own mental health issues, postpartum depression and PTSD. So I was nervous and I needed to get some education behind me before I did it with the kids. But I feel like if I was doing it today, it would be at my fingertips. I'd be so much easier to take 30 days and just do it.
Yeah, that's great. Mandy wants to know, what's your daughter's favorite food? Your son is broccoli and your daughter is?
What's Sage's favorite food? So she loves rice. It's funny. So the things that she loves rice. She loves frozen peas, not cooked, but frozen. She loves frozen peas. She loves pomelo. So she's not as fixated on one food as much as he is, but she enjoys a lot of the rice-based dishes for sure.
Nice, thanks.
Oh, red pepper.
She likes red peppers.
Red pepper, yeah, all day long.
Oh my God, that's great. Kate says, how do your kids get enough calcium?
So that's also a good question. Calcium is fortified in the plant milks a lot of the time. You definitely need to check the labels, so calcium's in there, but there's also a lot of calcium in the foods that we're eating on a day-to-day basis. And we've been programmed to think of calcium only being in dairy products, but calcium's also in a lot of our green leafies and things like that. So for the most part, if you're eating a wide variety of plant foods throughout the day, you should be hitting most of your micronutrients as you go.
Right. And there's a question from Michelle. Do you supplement with vitamins or minerals?
Yes, Michelle, great question. The kids will take a vitamin B12 every week. They take it twice a week, and they take vitamin D every day that we remember, because we're a family, we're not perfect, but they do take the vitamin D as well. Yes. And going back to those questions are good questions. I wanted them to have a blood test, and I don't think every child needs a blood test. Absolutely not. But just because of what I do in my work, and that my doctor was not very plant-based, very part of other kind of lifestyles, I wanted to have my kids to have a blood test. And he walked into the office after the blood test, and I remember him putting his hand on his hip, and he said, "You know what, Shoshana, there is something to this diet of yours." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he said that he's never seen a blood test come back so good before in any of his patients. So I know that as long as I keep doing what I'm doing, they're going, "Oh, there's one." As long as I keep.
Why is there PETA in here?
Hey, she can come on if she wants.
Do you want to come say hello and talk about red pepper?
No. I want to eat pepper.
So as long as, what was I saying? So he said, I know as long as I keep doing more or less what I was doing before, that they're absorbing all the nutrients that they need, that they're getting everything that they need. But I also had their vitamin Bs and their vitamin D tested at that time too, to know that we were kind of on the right track with our dosing and all of that.
Yeah. So for parents watching that are thinking of transitioning their kids, what advice do you have for them if the kids rebel? And what if your kids rebel? Because, I interviewed Heather McDougall, and she said at one point she was eating at McDonald's, but she learned very quickly that it made her skin look bad and she didn't feel good.
Yeah. So I think that's what it's about. And I mean, rebel, it depends what they mean by rebel, right? It's my house and I'm the parent, and it's my responsibility to offer the food. It's their decision to eat it. And I can make a rule that nothing with animal products crosses the threshold of the front door, right? Or the garage or the back door. But, that none of that food is going to be coming into the house. When they get to a certain age and they have their own money, should they choose to go to McDonald's or have regular cheese on their pizza or what it is, I mean, at a certain point, like I talked about, they don't have a lot of control. And if I continue to try to take that control, it will get worse and they might rebel in other areas. So I'll let them, I shouldn't even say I'll let them. They'll do what they do outside my house. They'll do what they do inside my house. And the consequences may be natural, and then they can decide again. And look, the research is showing that kids as of the age of 10 who are having autopsies in North America are showing signs of heart disease. So with my kids being 10 and 12, if I've started them off all of these years with plant-based nutrition, they have an idea of nutrition. They might stray and come back eventually, maybe in their 20s, maybe in their 30s. But I know that I've done what I can do in this time to help them get started right. So even if they did completely go to a standard North American diet, poo-poo and all of those other things, then they're getting a later start in terms of anything that might develop. And I just take it every day at a time.
I try to have as many kids on the show as I can. And the ones that I've talked to, they're actually really proud that they eat so healthfully and that they're not harming animals and the planet. And a lot of them have seen films like Game Changers, Forks Over Knives, Earthlings. Did you ever expose your kids to any of the documentaries?
So Game Changers is on our list. We talk about watching it all the time. We just haven't gotten to it yet, but they've definitely seen parts of it. They've heard so many of our podcasts with all of the doctors that we've had on. They see us speak at events, so they see other speakers as well. So they get exposure to that as well. But they are really proud of what they do, and especially for the animals. And in the last 4 months, we started volunteering at an animal sanctuary nearby to us, and we go every week, once a week, and we feed the animals and we cut up vegetables and we feed them, we put them to bed, we clean up, we make sure that everything's good for them. So they're getting a bigger lesson than just nutrition as well. And I think that that's something that may keep them from going back to McDonald's, after all this time. And if they do, maybe it would be something from a plant-based menu, if that even exists. I don't even know if it does.
Right. Deo says, could you please link to the vitamin B12 brand that you recommend?
Can I?
Or just tell us what it is, maybe.
Yeah,
I use the one from True.
Here in Canada, I think it's called GNC. I think that's what it's called. Is that what it's called? We take a fast absorb B12 with folate, and the company is GNA Naturals. GNA Naturals. There's also B12 fortified inside of their milk too. Not that they have a ton of it, but if they do have, cereal and stuff like that every now and then. But we haven't kind of gone overboard trying to find anything super, super fancy or, anything like that. With the blood tests that we get back and that the kids have gotten back, we see that we're at good levels and we have no complaints otherwise. Yeah.
Right. And if people are looking for a brand, I buy the brand that they sell at True North. It's called Pure Encapsulations, because if it's Dr. Goldhammer says it's clean, I'm going to trust it. Here's a really nice comment from, where did it go? Why does my thing go so fast? Oh, from Joni. We have a rule called the 2-bite rule. Oh no, we have a rule called the no thank you bite. Everyone has to have a no thank you bite. You'd be surprised on what they like and they thought they didn't. I got to implement that with Charles.
That's funny. So there's a lot of great things that families are doing. There's a lot of great writers that have written books for picky eaters, and I've kind of compiled a lot of those different exercises in my picky eater program. And what we'll do is, what I suggest you do is, if you're going to do that, be consistent with it and do it all the time and do it every meal. Because as soon as you stop it for a couple of weeks and you try to go back to it again, the kids kind of learn that, we don't need to do it anymore. And for some kids, if they're really, really picky or they're a little bit older and you haven't started it with them right away, you can go from smelling a new food for a couple of weeks and then licking the new food or just touching it to your tongue for a few weeks and giving them the opportunity to say no thank you as well. So there's different things that you can do, but what it comes down to is, do you as a parent have the backbone to be consistent with it and implement it properly? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and do that. And if the answer is no, find something else that's your speed for now, because you don't want to give them mixed messages throughout the meals.
Yeah, that's
and these are amazing questions. I'm so happy that all these people are asking them.
Well, this is a really important and popular topic because so many parents, they want to be their kid's friend and not their parent. And, they wouldn't give them cocaine or alcohol, or at least we hope they wouldn't. And certain foods have that effect, at least on certain people. And, when you set them up at such a young age with all that sugar, it's just, I mean, look what happened to me. I was fat till I was 52 because my mom gave me treats all the time. She couldn't say no. I mean, she had a problem herself, clearly, but still, who knows what my life would have been if I didn't have that. But speaking of my life, people are asking me to show my leggings because I have a really cool pair on today. So anyway.
Oh, super cool.
The company went out of business, LuLaRoe. Luckily, I have 40 pairs. So anyway, yeah.
It reminds me of a painter, or like a famous painter.
Like Peter Max or something, right? Or
yeah.
Picasso, or maybe a combination. You wouldn't know how Nooch got its name, would you? I posted it in the chat, but I'm just curious, why did we start calling it that? Because a lot of people don't know that that's the nickname.
Nooch. I don't know. Maybe someone will Google it quickly.
Yeah, and maybe we'll even have a prize for them, That'd be that. So tell us about your podcast. I don't listen to every episode, but I do listen quite frequently, and it's very good. I think I've been on it a couple of times, as a matter of fact. So how did you start it? Why did you start it? And what do you like doing about it? I mean, what do you like about doing it?
Perfect. Thank you. So you have been on it twice, and it's super exciting. It just started as a hobby. It started as a way for us to kind of, as parents who were really busy, who were, into our own athletics and raising 2 kids, we needed to find time to spend together. So why not create more work for us? But we came together and we created the podcast because it was like a date every week. And it kind of started off with our own information, and we got it going. And the idea was that all of these families, like I said at the beginning, don't have the knowledge, haven't been exposed to, don't have the tools, or don't have the inspiration to become plant-based or plant-heavy, or even know that this exists and that it's out there. And we wanted to keep as many people as possible from having to go through what we went through, where, Adam had heart disease, he had a tumor, and we were told 3 times in 9 months that he might not be around to raise the kids while I was pregnant with the little one. So for us, it was, how do we keep as many families as possible from ever going through what we went through? And if they're already finding themselves knee deep in the situation, let's work with them. Let's give them the tools to come out of that. And through that, we started to get some speaking engagements, right? So, throughout North America, in the United States and Canada, and we started to meet amazing doctors and amazing people like yourself. And we started inviting them to come on the Plant Trainers podcast as well. So we were able to not only give people our personal experience, and as we got our nutrition background, the science and all of that, but we were able to expose them to doctors and amazing advocates in the plant-based community, and have them hear what they had to say, or write into us if they knew that they were going to be on, and have their questions answered, or even us just asking it as a young family was kind of getting the message across to other young families too. Now, a lot of our listeners are 55 plus, and they're not necessarily, a lot of our listeners are single, but everybody's got a family, right? Everybody's got somebody, whether their families are friends or sisters or parents or kids or fur babies, whatever it is, everybody's got a family. And it doesn't, when illness sets in, it doesn't just affect you. It affects your partners, it affects your family, and it ripples out, and emotionally it gets to everybody as well. So if we can do what we can for people, then we're keeping them from experiencing what they may have experienced had they not gone plant-based, or at least to the same degree. But it's also the mental health issues that come along with that, because for me, that was long-term.
Nice. How many episodes have you done so far? Do you happen to know?
Yes, I do. This week, we just put out episode 392.
Okay, that is weird. Okay, I got to say, this is weird because you are on my show 393.
No. Oh my gosh.
Okay, because I just looked it up, because that is too weird.
That's very weird. Yeah, on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we're coming out with, 393. That's right. Yeah, 393. So we're really close to 400 episodes. I believe it's our 7th year. 1 year we put out double. We put out 2 a week, but every Tuesday morning it launches, and we talk about everything from athletics to plant-based nutrition to children to meditation. This week we talked about breast cancer. right? So we try to cover as many bases as possible. And it's, whatever condition we might be talking about, it always comes back to the same root. And it's always more or less the same foods. It's our fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, grains. These are the foods that we need to be eating. You need to be able to recognize your food.
Yeah, and it needs to come from the earth, not from a vending machine.
or not be man-made, be nature-made.
From a plant, not manufactured in a plant, as Dr. Hans Steele says. So
go.
Sarah wants to know how your husband Adam is now. And we can have him on. He can talk about his recovery from not losing a kidney.
No, he's taking a pass today, but how's he doing now? He's doing amazing. They watched him. You go from 3 months, 6 months, 6 months, a year. So once that tumor kind of showed that it was shrinking, they fired him and they said, well, if it's not getting any bigger and not staying still, then you can monitor it with your regular doctor, and if anything is ever out of the ordinary, you can come back. He's performing better in his 40s as an athlete than he was in his 20s and 30s. He's done 2 full Ironman. He's done a whole bunch of other shorter triathlon distances too. He learned how to swim at about the age of, what would you say, 40? At about the age of 40. Just amazing things. Recovery so much better, less salt baths, less massages needed, which helps my fingers. So he's doing amazing. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I mean, as terrible as the diagnosis was, in a way it's a gift, because then you and your family this wouldn't have happened for you guys.
Yeah. And you hear that so often, and you hear people say, I wouldn't trade my experience for anything because it got me to where I was. And I kept hearing that over and over and over again. And I even heard Adam say that, and it took me a lot longer to be able to say that, right? It took it because there was just so much there emotionally. And I'm glad that we are where we are today, but it took me until about a year ago to be able to say, I'm grateful for that situation, and that I'm here now, and that I can move forward. And if I had ever tried to say it before, I felt like I was lying. It didn't feel authentic to me. So anybody who has been through a health experience and is saying, I'm so grateful for that health experience because of where I am today, amazing. That's great. And continue with that. But anybody who keeps hearing everybody else say it, but they don't feel like they're there yet, you'll still get there. It took me about 8 years to get there, and you'll get there. It's really freeing when you do.
Yeah, it's at the time it's happening, that's not always how you're thinking. But imagine if we could just think that way when it's happening, because we know that the gift is coming, So,
Exactly.
So 392 episodes. Did you have a favorite?
Did I have a favorite? Am I supposed to say it was yours now? No.
No, please don't. I'm not fishing. It's just that I'm thinking
Yeah.
I'm going to be close to 500 episodes when I get to the 1 year mark. And I thought about doing a special of my top 10 favorite shows. 5 of them would be the top viewed, and 5 of them. And I love all my shows. I wouldn't have somebody on if I didn't feel they had something to offer and I like them. But there's always, like, for me, a few that stick out. And usually it's the ones that I've cried, because I don't cry a lot. And if somebody makes me cry, they've gotten to me. So it was the one with the rabbi, the one with Sarah Taylor, who still has brain cancer, Elaine Lelaine. Those 3 stick out because there was like a connection there. And of course, I love ones with kids. I had the shirts, they're just, kids are just amazing. So just any stick out in your mind is like your favorite?
So I reflect on it every now and then. And the truth is that every time I go back and reflect on it, it kind of changes because new ones come up and some stick with us. I know that when we had Dr. Michael Greger on, that was a turning point for us, because that was exciting because A, he's hilarious, and B, he's just walking there the whole time. But it was really a turning point for us. And when we started to have, bigger names on the podcast, so that was kind of a milestone. That was definitely a milestone. But I really do actually like the episodes with people who don't have as much exposure within the social media community and aren't as well known, and we haven't heard their story 100 times. They're it's so raw and it's so relatable from the listeners. So, and people can see themselves in their situation too. And then we get those messages saying, that was so inspirational, or I know I can do it now. And I know that it helped more people. So I guess at the end of the day, it's not as much about which ones I enjoy, but as which ones I knew made the biggest impact on our listeners.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love discovering undiscovered talent, if you will, in the plant-based world, because I call them the usual suspects, the ones that get the top 5 views on my channel: McDougall, Furman, Gregor, Goldhammer, and Lyle. And I love them. Don't get me wrong. I talk to them every day, but people are going to be able to find them, but they may not be able to find some of the buried treasures because they don't get the exposure. So we're like 2 peas in a pod, if you will. Is there anybody you ever get nervous interviewing? Because for me, it's just one person. It's always Dr. McDougall. It doesn't matter how many times. He just makes me nervous.
So I think I was nervous when we had Dr. Dean Ornish on. It was a situation where they reached out to us. And so I think the excitement level was really high. Was I nervous for one a couple of weeks ago? I feel like I was nervous for one a couple of weeks ago. It's normally some of the bigger doctors who we haven't had on yet. And I don't know if it's a nervous or more of an excitement. We're not live, we pre-record. So I know that if I'm like blushing at the beginning and like totally nervous and excited, that'll go away. But there's a huge excitement that happens for sure.
Yeah. So what's it like? Like, I imagine you're at home now, but do you make kind of like simple meals every day for your family? Do the kids make their own breakfast now? How do your days of eating look like for the family?
So we're more or less all responsible for our own breakfasts. So it doesn't matter when you really eat breakfast, as long as you kind of clean up after yourself. But the kids will make their own breakfast. I do make a pancake usually on Sunday, and there's leftover pancakes. So they're really good at throwing that into the sandwich maker and heating that up. They're really into oatmeal now. So they'll boil the water and they'll make their oatmeal. Adam and I have been eating steel cut oats. So I'll make a big batch in the Instant Pot and I'll put them in the fridge and in sections so that we can just pull that out and put all of our toppers and blueberries and all of that. So breakfasts are more or less taken care of. When we had school, the kids needed to make their own lunches every day. So, I would cut the carrots and I would do all the cutting and this and that, but they would assemble their lunches and put them together. And if they needed help, they can't cut the mango very well, right? So I'll help them, but they're responsible for putting it in the box, making sure it gets in the bag. Now that we're not in school right now, so all of Ontario, which is the equivalent of our state, our province here in Canada, all of Ontario is shut down for school right now, and everything is virtual learning. So there's not one person going to school in person. So they have their breakfast, they clean up, they go off to school, they come into the kitchen for snack at 11. And if I've been proactive, I'll cut up a mango or an apple and have it on the counter, or make them a smoothie and have that on the counter for when they walk in. And they can just kind of take it and take whatever else they want with that. And lunchtime, Adam's normally up in the kitchen with them for lunch. And then I kind of join in for the recess part a little bit later. So it's a mixture of us working together, but dinners are really simple. We do a lot of wraps or burrito style so that everybody can kind of take what they want. If you don't like refried beans, but you just want the black beans, fine. And they know they need to have a bean in there. The rice is out there. They can have avocado or not have avocado. They can have spinach or not have spinach. And everybody kind of makes their own. So we do a lot of meals like that, the bowls and the burritos and all of that,
Yeah, I love that. Everybody I love that idea. Just assemble your own food. It says you don't have to have a recipe all the time. People are saying my leggings remind them of an artist called Paul Mondrian, but I think they look like the Partridge Family school bus, which actually looks like Paul Mondrian as well. Yeah.
Maybe there's an artist whose name is like Mon Petite or something, or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. But next time, if I'm still lucky to come back, I will wear cool leggings too.
Okay, well, you can come back in May when your book comes out. And this just happens to be my favorite pair, which I wore for you. So Leah says, we are in lockdown in Ontario. Do you find it easier now?
Yes and no. I think that I'm extremely, extremely grateful and lucky that Adam's job allows him to be around too. So he's not around in the morning, but once lunchtime comes, he's much more flexible. So that makes it easier on me. We're doing a lot of shared. So I'm grateful to him and the situation for that. I like, it's not that I miss the kids leaving, but I miss the kids coming home. You know what I mean? Like they walk off to school every day, and I feel really good about that. The fact that they're walking almost 2K to school and almost 2K back, they're getting extra exercise. So I feel good about that. But when they walk through the door and you're like, hey, how are you? How was your day? You haven't seen them in hours. There's that excitement there. So I miss that excitement. Is it easier? No, I don't think so. I think it makes it a little bit more exciting.
No. Well, maybe you can just tell them to go another area of the house and then come back later.
I just locked myself in the basement.
That's so funny. Well, man, it's been great talking to you. How would you like people to follow you? Everything's in the show notes. I know that if you're watching on Facebook, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. There's no show notes, but on YouTube, the recipe's there. All the links to her various social media are there. So where do you prefer people to go?
Thanks. I would love if anybody wanted to listen to the Plant Trainers podcast, that they just kind of on their phone, they have their podcast app or wherever they like to listen to podcasts. You could subscribe, you could leave a rating and review. I would appreciate that. We're at Plant Trainers on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and Facebook as well, the Plant Trainers podcast. So they can check us out there. And we do answer all of our own questions ourselves. We don't have anybody doing that for us. So if you reach out to us, we'll be the ones to reach back to you.
Great. And Shoshana will be back in May. She's got a book coming out. Maybe Adam, who's camera shy today, will come back and tell you his story, or maybe a combo episode by then. Who knows, right?
Who knows? We'll see. I think he's got the big Santa beard now.
Right, and then maybe another one of these great kid-friendly recipes. What I loved about this recipe is it's like 10 minutes. Come on, it's like so easy to make something so delicious.
So delicious and super fast. And like I said, you don't have to do it with sweet potatoes. You could use noodles, you could use the lentil noodles, whatever it is that you want, and it can make a really good sauce and topping.
You can put it over rice and peas.
Yeah, rice and peas. Yeah,
absolutely. Your daughter would like that one for sure.
As long as the peas were still frozen.
Yeah, it's so funny. Well, thank you, Shoshana and Adam, for the work you do. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow when we're doing our first ever Iron Chef Smackdown. We've got two really wonderful YouTubers competing. We've got the Crocs versus the Gerudis. Maybe you guys can do an Iron Chef sometime, you and Adam.
Oh, maybe we can. Oh my gosh. I'd have to prepare in advance for that.
That would be fun. All right. Take care. Thanks, Shoshana. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. Thanks.